Many buyers believed these areas were naturally protected, as if prices could only move one direction. The story felt unshakable. But in 2026, that narrative runs into hard math. The shift isn't loud or dramatic. It shows up quietly. Homes sit longer. Price cuts stack up. Incentives return. And buyers aren't acting out of fear anymore. That's the real change. During the frenzy, people overbid and waived inspections just to win. Now leverage is shifting. Buyers move carefully, and sellers have to defend their numbers. This countdown breaks down the suburbs where affordability gaps are becoming impossible to ignore, and where the top spot might surprise you. If this hits home, like, subscribe, and comment the most overpriced California suburb you've noticed. Number 12. San Ramon. San Ramon has always given off the impression that it was carefully designed to be recession-proof. With its broad, polished streets, newer construction homes, thoughtfully planned communities, and a reputation anchored in strong schools and long-term stability, it practically radiates predictability. For years, purchasing a home here felt like locking in a sure thing. You paid a noticeable premium, but in return, you got steady neighbors, reliable demand, and a resale narrative that seemed to write itself. It felt automatic, almost guaranteed. Fast forward to 2026, and that sense of certainty is running into a hard reality: the monthly payment. That's where the real tension lives now. Buyers in San Ramon aren't acting out of urgency. Many are perfectly content renting while they watch the market unfold. Others already own property and will only consider moving if the next step truly justifies the cost. Because of that flexibility, they negotiate with more intensity. They scrutinize inspections more carefully. And if something feels even slightly off, they walk away without hesitation. They want specifics: school boundary details, upcoming HOA assessments, the remaining life of the roof and HVAC system, whether renovations were properly permitted. They're not purchasing a lifestyle fantasy. They're evaluating exposure and downside risk. San Ramon also demonstrates how quickly sentiment can shift in a high-end suburb. The second a handful of listings linger longer than expected, buyers pick up on it. Extended days on market turn into a narrative. Price history becomes leverage. One reduction doesn't just benefit a single purchaser, it quietly resets expectations for the next wave of buyers touring the same streets. What makes this area particularly vulnerable right now is its concentration of move-up buyers. These are households with both high incomes and high standards, and high standards can stall momentum quickly. They won't ignore freeway noise, an awkward layout, or a kitchen that feels outdated relative to the asking price. They'll request credits to offset interest rates, and if a seller pushes back, they simply pivot to the next option. In a premium market like this, rejection doesn't explode loudly. It spreads subtly, listing by listing, until sellers collectively feel the pressure. Number 11. Pleasanton. Pleasanton carries a slightly different identity. Around the Bay Area, it's widely viewed as the go-to stronghold for families. The community people settle in when they're thinking about stability, strong schools, and mapping out a long-term future. Most homeowners here purchase with a decade-long horizon in mind. They aren't speculating or chasing quick appreciation. They're planting roots and planning to stay a while. Ironically, that's exactly why any pressure in this market builds quietly rather than explosively. Pleasanton operates as a classic move-up chain market. When one segment hesitates, the entire sequence slows down. Families who intended to sell and upgrade are now second-guessing the decision, because walking away from a historically low mortgage rate feels like surrendering a financial edge they may never see again. That reluctance shrinks inventory, but it also shrinks the pool of buyers willing to stretch their budgets. The result is a market that feels suspended, not collapsed, not lifeless, just slower, more cautious, and far more negotiable than many sellers are comfortable admitting. There's also a psychological hurdle unique to Pleasanton homeowners. They vividly remember the peak: neighbors selling in a single weekend, bidding wars that escalated beyond reason, offers that felt surreal. But today's buyers aren't anchored to those memories. They're focused on monthly payment realities, the true condition of the property, and whether the home justifies its premium compared to other available choices. And Pleasanton buyers can be meticulous. They won't overlook an aging kitchen, a roof nearing the end of its lifespan, outdated windows, or signs of deferred maintenance. They request credits. They push for repairs. They expect clean inspection reports. What makes 2026 particularly uncomfortable here is how subtle the slowdown can appear. Beautiful homes still hit the market. Showings still happen. Interest still exists. But offers arrive lower than sellers hoped, and negotiations stretch out longer than expected. A homeowner might receive solid traffic and still fall short of their target price. Then comes the quiet reset. One property closes below the previous benchmark, and suddenly the next appraisal reflects that new reality. Comparable sales begin recalibrating expectations, one transaction at a time. That's how a calm, desirable suburb adjusts, gradually, almost invisibly, through comps rather than chaos. Number 10. Redwood City. Redwood City isn't merely another suburb, it's Silicon Valley's gravitational pull made visible. People choose to buy here because they want to stay close to opportunity, tap into the lifestyle, and feel connected to the innovation economy. Certain neighborhoods are walkable and vibrant, while others offer a quieter residential rhythm, but the overall identity creates a powerful assumption. Demand will always run deep. What's changed in 2026 is the mindset of the buyer. In Redwood City, house hunters aren't behaving like anxious bidders scrambling to win. They're thinking more like analysts, or even investors. They monitor price reductions closely. They pay attention to how long properties sit on the market. They line up active listings against recent sales and question why any seller believes peak-era pricing still applies. When they tour a property, they're not just admiring finishes, they're mentally calculating renovation budgets in real time. And in Redwood City, those costs can escalate quickly. Many homes are older, and beneath the charm there can be foundation concerns, drainage complications, outdated electrical systems, or cosmetic updates that become unavoidable for anyone wanting true move-in readiness. That's why the slowdown here feels different. Sellers who once expected quick, clean offers are now navigating extended negotiations. Inspections carry weight again. Appraisals matter again. Buyers dissect every imperfection and use it as leverage. If a home doesn't clearly stand out, it's treated like a replaceable product and priced accordingly. There's also a specific type of pricing tension in this market. Some homeowners still anchor their expectations to tech sector confidence, assuming the next well-compensated buyer will happily pay a premium just to secure the zip code. But today's buyers are paying attention to layoffs, hiring freezes, and bonus uncertainty. They're factoring that volatility directly into their offers. If a property isn't exceptional, buyers are content to wait for the seller to adjust. And when several listings adjust at once, an entire neighborhood begins recalibrating in real time. Redwood City remains a fundamentally strong location. But even strong markets aren't immune to shifts in buyer psychology. When a tech-driven buyer base stops rushing forward, momentum fades, and a once-hot market can start to feel unexpectedly heavy. Number 9. Sunnyvale. Sunnyvale operates like a quiet heavyweight. It doesn't rely on flashy marketing or buzz because the employment map speaks for itself. With close access to major tech campuses, a concentration of high-income households, and steady buyer interest, it has long been viewed as one of the steadiest bets in the region. For years, it practically defined stability. But in 2026, Sunnyvale is running into a very real constraint: the payment ceiling. Even top earners have financial limits, and those limits are starting to matter. What's especially interesting is that the buyers who can afford to purchase here are often the least willing to overextend. They tend to be analytical and methodical. They run spreadsheets. They compare the cost of owning versus renting. They think in terms of opportunity cost. And above all, they dislike the idea of buying at what feels like the peak. Sunnyvale also faces a sensitivity issue when it comes to comparable sales. Many neighborhoods feature similar floor plans and housing styles, which means pricing signals travel fast. One softer than expected sale can quickly reset expectations. That lower closing becomes the new benchmark. Appraisals tighten. Sellers who were anchored to older numbers suddenly realize the market has shifted beneath them. Buyers know this, and they use it. Their offers come in grounded in comps, not emotion. There's another layer of pressure here, the expectation of near perfection. In a more cautious environment, Sunnyvale buyers are quick to discount properties that feel like projects. An outdated kitchen, aging roof, worn flooring, each becomes a reason to request credits. After committing to a significant purchase price, they have little appetite for additional upgrades. The sharper shift, though, is that negotiations aren't just about price anymore. They're about minimizing risk. Buyers ask detailed questions about permits, solar agreements, foundation inspections, and documentation for every improvement made to the home. With monthly payments at these levels, they want predictability. Surprises are unacceptable, and once a handful of sellers begin offering concessions, whether in the form of credits or rate buydowns, the broader market takes note. Buyers start viewing those incentives as standard, not exceptional. Sunnyvale will continue to draw interest. The difference in 2026 is that demand is no longer powered by urgency or fear of missing out. It's driven by careful calculation, and careful calculation tends to favor the buyer. Number 8. Santa Clara. Santa Clara is anchored in real economic infrastructure. With major employers, sprawling campuses, constant business activity, and a central location, it seems like the kind of market that should be insulated from serious turbulence. On paper, it looks protected. But in 2026, the strain here goes beyond just high purchase prices. What's setting in is something closer to total cost fatigue. Buyers aren't only thinking about the mortgage, they're tallying up the entire stack: property taxes, ongoing maintenance, future upgrades, and the long-term expense of keeping the home competitive in a demanding market. They still value the location. They still want access to the job base. What they don't want is the feeling of being financially pinned down by ownership costs. That shift alone makes the buyer pool more cautious and far more exacting. Santa Clara also faces a quiet tug-of-war between newer construction and older neighborhoods. Recently built homes offer modern layouts and fewer immediate repair concerns, which feels reassuring in a high-payment environment. Older properties may have charm and character, but charm loses appeal when cash flow feels tight. As a result, older listings tend to linger. They endure more intense inspection negotiations and often require larger concessions to get across the finish line. There's another subtle layer at play: buyer sensitivity to employment signals. It's not always about headline layoffs. Sometimes it's hiring freezes, internal restructures, or uncertainty around bonuses. Buyers don't need a dramatic downturn to hesitate. They just need enough ambiguity to justify waiting. What stands out in 2026 is how methodically buyers evaluate each showing. They walk through a property and instantly convert every flaw into a future expense. An outdated electrical panel translates to dollars. Aging windows mean more dollars. A roof nearing the end of its lifespan becomes a looming line item. When someone is already stretching to afford the monthly payment, those projected costs can easily tip the decision from maybe to no. That dynamic corners sellers. Either address the issues up front with repairs or credits, or risk watching the home sit while newer, move-in-ready properties capture attention. Number 7. San Mateo. San Mateo trades on lifestyle appeal. With its polished streets, strong commuter access, and relaxed peninsula atmosphere, it's often treated like a premium product. Buyers are drawn here because they want proximity to the Bay Area's economic engines, without being swallowed by the intensity and density of the biggest urban cores. It feels secure, connected, and high quality. In 2026, though, that premium is being examined more closely. San Mateo buyers tend to have choices, and choice creates leverage. They can rent and wait. They can shift slightly north or south along the peninsula. They can target a different neighborhood pocket. Some even have the flexibility to relocate entirely while keeping their income intact. That independence changes behavior. Buyers who have options don't rush. In this market, details matter: walkability, street noise, school boundaries, commute flow. Whether the home genuinely justifies its asking price. San Mateo buyers aren't lenient about condition either. If the interior feels dated, the floor plan seems awkward, or inspections uncover costly repairs, they ask for credits, or they step away. Sellers who assume the zip code alone will carry the transaction are discovering that prestige isn't enough. Buyers want tangible value. San Mateo also has little patience for stale listings. Once a property lingers, the narrative shifts. Buyers start to assume there's an issue, even if there isn't one. They probe for discounts. They monitor price reductions and move in when they sense seller fatigue. What makes this market particularly sharp right now is that buyers aren't just comparing houses, they're comparing lifestyles. With hybrid work offering more flexibility, they question whether the premium is justified when nearby peninsula communities offer similar quality at a lower cost. That broader comparison keeps buyers steady, and steady buyers negotiate firmly. One noticeable price cut often leads to another, because no seller wants to be the last one clinging to peak-era expectations. Number 6. Santa Clarita. Santa Clarita has long served as Los Angeles' family release valve. It's expansive, deeply suburban, and built around the promise that you can gain more space and a quieter pace of life while still remaining within LA's economic orbit. For many buyers who found themselves priced out closer to the city, this was the practical solution. In 2026, however, the vulnerability here isn't limited to pricing alone. It's about distance pressure. Outer ring suburbs are highly sensitive to shifts in work patterns. If in-office expectations increase even modestly, long commutes start costing more than gas. They drain time, energy, and flexibility. Buyers know that, and they factor it into their decisions. They aren't bidding with emotion. They're moving carefully. Santa Clarita also has a housing layout that intensifies competition. Large tracts of similar homes make side-by-side comparisons easy. In a slowing market, similarity becomes a problem. When one seller reduces the price, the next often follows. Incentives begin to surface. Before long, buyers treat concessions as standard rather than exceptional. That's how a pricing reset quietly unfolds. Another layer to this market is the move-up buyer dynamic. Many households come here to stretch for more square footage. Stretching feels reasonable when values are climbing quickly. It feels far riskier when prices level off and monthly payments remain elevated. That psychological shift alone can cool demand. Here's the sharper edge. Santa Clarita markets itself as a value play. But value depends heavily on momentum. Once a few listings begin sitting longer than expected, buyers assume further price cuts are inevitable, and they wait. That waiting extends market time. Longer market time leads to faster reductions. As new, lower comparable sales emerge, appraisals tighten. Sellers who anticipated a smooth closing suddenly face renegotiations after inspections or valuation reports. Not because the property is flawed, but because the market tone has cooled. Santa Clarita doesn't require dramatic headlines to reprice. It doesn't need a crash narrative. All it takes is hesitation from buyers and the gradual realization among sellers that control has shifted. Number 5. Chula Vista. Chula Vista stands as one of the largest suburban drivers in San Diego County. It continues to expand, continues drawing families, and continues offering a version of Southern California living that feels more attainable than the ultra-expensive coastal enclaves. For many, it represents a place where homeownership still seems within reach. In 2026, though, within reach comes down to the full monthly obligation. Buyers in Chula Vista tend to be practical and highly sensitive to payment structure. They weigh ownership against renting. They compare single-family homes with townhomes. They analyze school districts, commute times, and the broader cost of everyday living. When the numbers feel strained, they pause. They don't rush into contracts out of fear. What makes this market particularly reactive is how quickly the buyer pool shrinks when financing tightens. A smaller group of qualified buyers leads to fewer offers. Fewer offers extend days on market, and longer market times quietly shift negotiating power. That's when buyers begin requesting concessions, closing cost credits, repair allowances, rate buydowns. If a seller declines, the property often lingers. Chula Vista also features neighborhoods filled with comparable homes, which makes side-by-side shopping easy. If one listing feels overpriced, buyers simply move to a nearly identical alternative nearby. That dynamic forces sellers into direct competition with one another. Here's where it sharpens. Buyers aren't just negotiating over purchase price. They're negotiating for monthly sustainability. They want sellers to absorb some of the strain from higher interest rates, whether through credits, repairs, or outright price reductions, because they understand that eventually someone else will concede. Once one seller offers a substantial credit, expectations reset. The next buyer begins asking for similar terms from every listing they tour. That's how leverage spreads across an entire zip code without dramatic headlines. On the surface, the market can still look active. Showings continue, listings move, but the final sale prices begin edging downward. Number 4. Oceanside. Oceanside blends coastal lifestyle with a more practical price point. It carries that beach town energy, benefits from a strong military presence, and consistently attracts buyers who want to live near the water without stretching to the highest-tier coastal price tags. For a long time, sellers operated under a simple assumption: proximity to the ocean would do the selling for them. In 2026, that assumption is being tested. Buyers still value the location, but they're no longer approaching it with urgency. The emotional rush has cooled. Instead, they're separating the dream from the dollars. They're asking what that coastal premium truly delivers. Does the property itself justify the number, or are they paying extra for the concept of beach living? They're also factoring in the realities of ownership, maintenance, ongoing upkeep, and the long-term cost of protecting a home exposed to ocean air. Salt, moisture, and aging structures can quietly inflate expenses over time. Oceanside's wide range of property types adds another layer. Buyers can choose between single-family homes, townhomes, and condos across multiple neighborhoods. That flexibility gives them leverage. If a detached home feels overpriced, they pivot to a townhome. If HOA dues seem excessive, they shift to another pocket of the city. Sellers can't rely on location alone. They have to compete on pricing and condition. Property condition has become especially important. Coastal wear, deferred maintenance, older construction, and renovation needs all factor heavily into buyer calculations. Inspections are taken seriously again. Credits are requested. Concessions are negotiated. What sharpens the shift in 2026 is that the coastal label no longer guarantees immediate offers. Buyers are scrutinizing the full financial picture: HOA fees, potential special assessments, rising insurance costs, and ongoing maintenance, all layered on top of an already significant purchase price. And once one seller begins offering credits or reducing the price, expectations ripple outward. Buyers start assuming discounts are part of the deal structure everywhere. The outcome isn't dramatic. Listing prices may still look confident on paper, but the real transaction often hinges on concessions behind the scenes. Oceanside isn't crashing, it's becoming negotiable. And when a coastal market shifts into negotiation mode, the overall tone changes in a meaningful way. Number 3. Santa Ana. Santa Ana ranks among the largest cities in Orange County, and its housing market is powered by real, everyday demand. Dense neighborhoods, working families, and a deep pool of buyers determined to remain in the area all contribute to what should, in theory, create resilience. But in 2026, Santa Ana is highlighting a clear gap between demand and true affordability. Interest is still there, yet affordability is under pressure. Many buyers in this city make decisions based primarily on the monthly payment. If that number feels unstable, they pause. If repair costs seem overwhelming, they back off. If HOA dues pile onto an already tight budget, they reconsider. Cash reserves are protected carefully. Santa Ana also has strong block-by-block differences, and buyers evaluate those variations closely. They compare parking availability, traffic noise, commute access, and even the overall feel of a specific street. If a property doesn't present itself as clear value, buyers won't stretch simply because it carries an Orange County address. That automatic premium mindset is fading. Inspections carry serious weight here. Buyers are wary of unexpected expenses, so they push for credits, repairs, or price reductions when something feels uncertain. Sellers who resist those negotiations often find their listings lingering longer than anticipated. What makes Santa Ana particularly sensitive in 2026 is how much small financial shifts matter. Many households operate on tight margins, so a slight increase in interest rates, a higher-than-expected insurance quote, or an unforeseen repair bill can derail a deal. Today's buyers arrive prepared. They bring checklists instead of emotion. Plumbing condition, electrical panels, roof lifespan, HVAC age, any history of water intrusion, everything gets scrutinized. And if documentation isn't available, buyers assume higher risk and adjust their offers accordingly. Number 2. Huntington Beach. Huntington Beach carries an iconic reputation. It blends surf town lifestyle, social status, and the classic beach dream into a functioning suburban city where families put down roots, commute to work, and build long-term wealth. For years, many have viewed it as a trophy market, one that should be insulated from normal market pressures. In 2026, however, Huntington Beach feels less like an automatic win and more like a high-end negotiation table. Buyers still want in, but they're no longer willing to pay whatever it takes. They're selective. They expect properties to be truly move-in ready. Outdated interiors get discounted. Awkward floor plans lose appeal quickly. Anything that hints at future expense becomes a bargaining chip. If a home isn't dialed in, buyers request credits, or they simply move on. The city also contains distinct micro-markets. One neighborhood can perform very differently from another, and buyers know it. They compare school zones, proximity to the shoreline, and even subtle pocket-to-pocket differences. Listings are played against each other strategically. That comparison shopping creates leverage. Another dynamic at play is the mindset of lifestyle buyers. Many people purchasing here aren't operating under immediate necessity. They want the experience, but they can afford to wait. And when buyers are willing to wait, urgency disappears. A listing that lingers becomes a message. Buyers interpret extended days on market as a sign the seller may eventually soften. That perception invites tougher negotiations. Here's the sharper reality. The premium in Huntington Beach is rooted in lifestyle, but lifestyle buyers are still value-conscious. They'll pay for proximity to the ocean, but they won't absorb the cost of a renovation project. They examine HOA restrictions, parking constraints, street noise, and even the orientation of the home. At this price point, every imperfection feels amplified. Once one seller offers a meaningful credit or adjusts pricing, expectations ripple across the neighborhood. Flexibility becomes the new baseline. Huntington Beach remains a premium market. The difference in 2026 is that the premium is no longer assumed. It has to be justified through condition, strategic pricing, and a realistic understanding of buyer psychology. Number 1. Riverside. Riverside functions as Southern California's suburban stress test. Unlike markets driven primarily by ultra-high earners, this city depends on a broad base of traditional, financed buyers, working families stretching to remain in the region. These are households that feel every single shift in the monthly payment. When that wide buyer pool grows cautious, Riverside reacts quickly. Inventory doesn't pause just because demand cools. Life keeps moving. Job relocations happen. Families change size. Investors cash out. Builders continue delivering new homes. Even if urgency fades on the demand side, supply keeps arriving. That's when competition intensifies. In Riverside, competition shows up in visible ways: price reductions, closing cost credits, repair concessions. Buyers insist the monthly payment must make practical sense. Sellers aren't just competing against other resale homes, they're up against builders offering rate buy-downs and flashy incentives in new communities. That's where repricing speeds up. Incentives and reductions begin resetting comparable sales. And because many Riverside neighborhoods feature similar housing tracts, comps move fast. One softer closing can ripple across an entire subdivision. Appraisals adjust, offers recalibrate. Sellers who hesitate to adapt often lose both time and leverage. What places Riverside at number 1 is simple. Affordability is the core engine of this market. When affordability tightens, the entire system feels the strain at once. Buyers become highly selective, not because they've lost interest in the city, but because their margins leave no room for error. They negotiate more aggressively over repairs. They push for credits to ease the monthly burden. And they walk away quickly from homes that feel overpriced. Once a handful of sellers accept lower numbers, the new comp set spreads through the neighborhood like a flare in the dark. Expectations shift almost overnight. Riverside isn't collapsing, but it stands as the clearest illustration of 2026's underlying reality. A suburb can remain desirable and still experience softening when affordability tightens and buyers stop operating from fear.